we spoke to survivalists prepping for disaster, and here's what we learned about the end of the world. This is on The Conversation. We are all FUCK'd, a crude though oft-uttered sigh, which tries to encapsulate an intense but vague anxiety we experience on many fronts. And what is causing this? The possibility of climate-induced population extinction, the development of so-called NBIC, nano-bio-info-cogno technologies, global financial collapse, the exponential development of potentially malevolent machine intelligence, to name a few. The doomsday clock, a symbolic gauge of our risk of obliterating humanity, has never been closer to midnight, quote unquote. Of course, the end of humanity is as old as humanity itself. Astrologists and religious orders predicting the world will end for millennia, but the types of risks we're concerned by today really are quite distinctive to our era. They are irreversible, they have planetary and in some cases extraplanetary reach, and they have new technological textures. These risks have been described as existential because they threaten to cause, as the philosopher Nick Bostrom has written, the extinction of Earth originating intelligent life, or to otherwise permanently and drastically destroy the potential for future desirable development. This is by Gary Sinclair, lecturer, marketing, Dublin City University, Nora Campbell, associate professor, marketing, Trinity College, Dublin, Sarah Brown, assistant professor, marketing, Trinity College, Dublin. And this is Trinity College, Dublin, Creative Commons article. So as a result, the phenomena of prepping, quote unquote, a predominantly American phenomena of storing food, water, weapons, developing self-sufficiency skills for independently surviving disasters, is on the rise. This can be seen in the increasing amount of literature, podcasts, movies, TV shows on the subject, fictional and real, along with the inevitable growth in related consumer markets such as camping equipment and bushcraft courses that speak to the anxiety of existential risk. Growing prominence in Europe brought us to research this area. Beyond tinfoil hats, I recently didn't look into it, but I was very enthusiastic to see it. Amazon is selling mini homes for like $30,000. And you could just put them together in, a couple of days, I guess. I have to look into that. That sounds fantastic. So, media accounts tend to focus on the peculiarities of prepping through extreme examples. Reports of the Silicon Valley elite buying up bolt holes in remote New Zealand, or the tinfoil hat wearing, forest inhabiting eccentric. But prepping is not a marginal subculture, but a precautionary response people have to permanent crisis, as our research reveals. By analyzing, engaging with online forums, speaking at length with a series of self-identified preppers, it became clear that most preppers are not so out of the ordinary. Listening to preppers, you can begin to understand their reasoning. They often talk about their prepper lives as originating from some trigger or turning point, such as an insider seeing financial collapse firsthand, and the house of cards it reveals, or the difficulties that come with illness or unemployment. After these realizations, our interviewees explained that they transitioned from being a woefully underprepared to a prepared individual. Our research concentrated on European preppers who are somewhat differentiated from American stereotypes. We found that the European prepper views the culture of their American counterparts as political, religious, weaponized, and misogynistic. They feel that the media attention this receives delegitimizes the emphasis on rationality, and particularly that is embedded into their practices. Instead, common sense is the most valued currency in European prepper culture. They are profoundly distrustful of the ability of institutions to face crises. And in comparison to some popular accounts, we found that preppers are often more concerned with mundane failures of the system, that such as electricity cuts or pension losses. Well, we just saw a couple of days ago that London and the southeast, over 11 million people had lost electricity for a couple of hours. So that the system's electricity cuts, pension losses, mundane failures, and the more spectacular apocalyptic aesthetics associated with prepping culture, such as environmental collapse or nuclear fallout. They know they are ridiculed and stigmatized, a consequence of the American stereotype. Their online forums are filled with warnings. If you are journalists, keep out. They are concerned with OPSEC, operational security, that is, concerns about personal privacy and the strategic advantage of withholding information about the location of resources in the eventuality that any prep may be put into practice. Again, such practices are framed within the narrative of common sense, and common sense is claimed in order to reject its opposite, paranoia. Bin bags and radios. Preppers consider people who don't prepare, the rest of society that is, as shockingly ignorant of the world around them. It is we who are abnormal. The dependent civilian is variously viewed as oblivious, dilettantished, complacent, and trusting, while the prepper is watchful. Preparation is seen as a type of foresight that is missing in ordinary consumers. A prepper looks at the world differently. Far from smart, interconnected, and highly functioning infrastructure subject to the rule of law, the city is a jungle where the lone prepper negotiates mindful dangers. This is why they carry preps with them all the times. From fire-making equipment to bin bags to radios, in their pantries, in their cars, on their person. One prepper told us, "I always carry 2 or 3 bin bags so I can make shelter no matter where I go. One of the bin bags can be used to make a roof, and I could fill the others with leaves to create comfort and heat." Preparers pour scorn on consumer-centric technological interfaces such as the social media, and invest their time in pre-digital technologies like primitive fire and farming. Again, common sense is the most valued currency. So what will happen to the rest of us? The prepper has trained for a world without a market system and considered what will happen when the dependent civilian comes calling. In common scenarios, such as electricity cuts, council water repairs, preppers tend to depict themselves as generous, helping out dependent neighbors, despite the mocking it still often brings. But in the ashes of a more serious consumer collapse, our conversations revealed an implicit subtext that when the shit does hit the fan, it will be everyone for themselves. And ultimately, it will be your neighbor that presents the biggest threat. Again, this is the common sense reality for preppers living in the world where the majority of people are seen as underprepared for whatever disaster we may befall. Prepper lessons. When we think about escaping the constraints of the capitalistic dominant economy, we're often met with utopian connotations of a sustainable society that places emphasis on community cooperation, sharing, and caring. The preppers offer a different take on what the sustainable world looks like, one grounded in ideologies of protectionism and self-preservation. This echoes the 17th century philosopher Thomas Hobbes' famous suggestion that in the absence of institutions, humans would become trapped in a cycle of violence, a war of all against all. In other words, community is dangerous and consumption requires bunkering down. Such individualistic prepper modes of thinking are likely to germinate further within society, particularly in the face of the current climate crisis. And this must be considered when we think of the practicalities of alternative systems in the neoliberal marketplace. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.